Okay, excellent. So everybody, first of all, a good night of Shabbos. Erev. It's already Monday the next week. For the truth is that you lose your time a little bit here when you're in Bidud and you're 24/7 with the kids trying to keep everybody entertained. It's a lot of fun and Baruch Hashem, a lot of good things coming out of it. I started looking into this week's parsha, and I also started looking into the month of El a little bit more. I am back in Eretz Yisrael, so it feels like it's a new Zman. But I want to focus today on an important lesson that we learned from this week's Parsha. And it's a lesson that is nogeh to our lives as Jews and to our lives through difficult times. And in general, just how to look at our life. And I think it's something that's super important for us moving into the next year. So if you look in the beginning of the Parsha, we have the Parsha of the Bikurim, of the first fruits that are brought, והיה כי תבוא אל הארץ אשר השם אלוקיך נותן לך נחלה וירשת וישבת בה ולקחת מראשית כל פרי האדמה אשר תביא מארצך. You should take the first fruits that of your land and bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. And then when you bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, and this is important, that's really, really fascinating. When you bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, there's a whole parsha that we read. Ve'anita ve'amarta lifnei Hashem Elokecha, and you should answer in front of Hashem your God, and you should express. And what is the parsha that is actually said over during this parsha of the Bikurim? It's none other than the parasha that we read during Leil HaSeder. During Leil HaSeder, we read this entire story that is brought out during the parsha of the Bikurim. And the truth is, if you think about it, this is the only mitzvah in the Torah that we say over the story of the Jewish people while we're performing the mitzvah. In fact, there is a mitzvah to bring the Bikurim, but with that mitzvah, we also have the mitzvah to say the story of the entire history of the Jewish people. There is no other mitzvah like this in the entire Torah, where you need to say the history of the Jewish people. In fact, the only other mitzvah that we have to say over the history of the Jewish people is when the mitzvah itself is to say over the story. When is that mitzvah? That mitzvah is the night of the Seder. Leila Seder, we have the mitzvah of saying over the story. And in fact, if you look at the Rambam in Hilchos Chametz Umatzah Parak Zayin, Halacha Dalid, quotes that the mitzvah is to read this parsha. The parsha of the Bikurim is the parsha that we learn out on Leila Seder, and that's the parsha that we have a mitzvah to say over the story. V'chol amar v'lesap ereza meshubach is referring to this parsha. So the question is, what is so special about the mitzvah of Bikurim specifically, that is the mitzvah that we need to say over the entire history and the story of the Jewish people? That's number one. And number two, why is it that the Haggadah Shel Pesach is specifically taken from Parshas Ki Tavo, which is the end of the Torah, and not taken from Sefer Shmos? If you were to choose the detailed story that tells of the Jewish people leaving Mitzrayim and going to Eretz Yisrael and embarking on the journey of Exodus, that story is told in Sefer Shmos, not over here in the few psukim of Parshas Ki Tavo, where the person who brings the Bikurim, he says, oh, Vanita Vamarta, that I came out of Mitzrayim again. Let's look at the psukim of how it says it in the Torah this week. Listen to the words. These are the words that we know from the Haggadah Shel Pesach. Vanita Vamarta, Arami Oved Avi, Vayered Mitzrayma, Vayagor Sham, Bimtei Me'at, Vayisham Legoy Gadol, Atzuv Harav, Vayanu Otanu HaMitzrim, Vayanunu, ויראה אותנו המצרים, ויענונו, ויתנו עלינו עבודה קשה, ונצעק אל השם אלוקי אבותינו, וישמע השם את קולנו, וירא את אוננו, ואת עמלנו, ואת לחצנו. These are all the psukim that we learn out in detail about Leila Seder. Why is it that this is the parasha that is chosen for Leila Seder? And why is it that we have this mitzvah when you come to bring the Bikurim? That's when a person needs to say over the entire story of the Jewish people specifically. And even more so, if you look at the Or Sameach brings a remez from this week's parsha, and he says, Ve'anita ve'amarta, anita means to answer, like la'anot. And so you should answer Ve'anita ve'amarta to the Kohen. He says that's why this is the parsha, because we read it over lechem oni. It's over the bread of affliction, the bread, the matzah, the poor man's bread. That's where you say, because you see it from the words of Ve'anita ve'amarta. So we have to understand what's so special about this parsha specifically, and even more so, and to try to understand it even deeper and to see how it's relevant to our lives, the Medrash Rabbah in Bereshis Rabbah, Aleph Dalet brings down, Amar Rav Una b'shem Rav Matna, Bizchut Gimel Dvarim Nivra Olam. The world was created in the merit of three things, and it says Bizchut Chala, uBizchut Maasrot, uBizchut Bikurim. Because of Chala, that you are mafresh Chala, because of Meiser, that you give Meiser Sheni and Meiser Ani, and because of Bikurim, that's why the world was created. There's something very deep about the mitzvah of Bikurim that we have to understand that is very fundamental and essential to our whole entire life. We have to understand what it represents and what it means. And I think the yesod is, and this is an issue that we've spoken about in the past, but yet it's like it's so important to speak about it over and over again because we have to incorporate it into our lives. And that is that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. And he created the world for us. You look at the Ramchal and Derech Hashem, he created it for our own good. The ultimate good is to bestow good on other people. And therefore he created this world, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving us the ultimate good. Now, part of giving us the ultimate good is giving us the opportunity to connect to Hashem on the highest level and giving us the opportunity to be like Hashem. That is the ultimate good, is that if we could be like him, if we could connect to him, because he is the ultimate good, and therefore he created it. In order to do that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Bechira. He gave us the free choice. He, in a certain way, he was Ne'elam. He hid himself from the world. That's the way the word Olam, which means world, comes from the word Ne'elam, hidden. The essence of the world is that Hashem created it for us, for our good, but yet he's hidden from it so that we should find him and get the ultimate good in being like a Kadosh Baruch Hu in this world. Because again, if the concept of us just doing the mitzvos, that's not what reveals God's glory in this world. If there is a button for Hashem to press, and we're all doing the mitzvos, that doesn't fulfill anything. Hashem doesn't want us to be robots that are servants that are doing because we have to do it, and he's pressing the button, he's going to smite us all if we don't do it, right? He didn't create it like that. He created it with our Bechira Chavshis so that we choose to be Mamlech Hashem, to make Hashem our Melech. We're going to speak about it more as we get closer to Rosh Hashanah, where we have that Bechira Chavshis to choose Hashem in the world where he's specifically hidden from that world. Now, the way we choose Hashem is by recognizing that everything that we have in this world and everything that we do in this world comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and is to glorify Hashem's name in this world. Now, some people think that it's the people who are removed from the world, who are more spiritual, they're the ones who could glorify Hashem's name the most. But the truth is that Judaism looks at it entirely different. That the ultimate Kiddush Hashem does not come necessarily from the people who are removed from society, who are removed from the day-to-day actions in the world and that live just a spiritual life. But rather, the ultimate Kiddush Hashem comes from us, comes from people who are involved in the physical world. People who are, it doesn't matter what profession they're in, they're accountants, they're masseuses, they are doctors, they are real estate agents, they're financial brokers, whatever they might be doing in their life, do they recognize Hashem there on the day-to-day? They're students. Do they live with Hashem in their life? Do they bring him into their life? Are they choosing to see Hashem and glorify his name throughout whatever they're doing? Now, this is what the Parsha of Bikurim is all about. The Hasidic Sfarim speak about this. Rav Elimelech Melezhin speaks about that this is really the yesod of the entire Parsha of Bikurim. And if you look at the Mishnah in Bikurim, the Mishnah of Bikurim tells us this tremendous simcha and celebration that took place when we would bring the Bikurim. Just read through the Mishnah. It's amazing. It's like you would take the fruit and you would go down to the field with your children and you would tie the red ribbon and you would wait for it to grow. And then you would put it in a gold basket and you would put it on the ox and you would give them karnayim of gold, and you would walk up, and there would be a flute, and all the other people would come. This would be aliyah regel with the bikurim, and people would come out from the different villages to escort you to Yerushalayim. And as you enter Yerushalayim, all of the people in front of the stores, they're going to come out and they're going to say, come. They're going to bring out more fruits from their stores so that everything will be filled with fruit. It was a whole production of bringing the first fruit to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bringing it to the Beis HaMikdash, giving it to the Kohen. What was the concept of this whole Yesod is that you're bringing a Priya Adama, you're bringing something that is earthly, that is from the Adama, from the most physical of things, but yet you're elevating it to the highest of levels. You're showing that this is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Imagine a person who worked on a project for a whole year. If you've ever worked on something for a long time, a student in college, it's the year project, the end of the year project. He worked on it his whole entire year. This is like his neshama, a child who worked on a painting for days. And he's all excited and he's coming to show it to his parents. And you know what his excitement is? He says, this is my first painting in my art class. And mommy, I want to give it to you. I want to give it to you as a sign of appreciation. What does that do to the mommy? She gets all excited. She's excited because this kid understands that all of his hard work and effort, and especially the beginning, he's willing to give it to his mommy. It shows that he appreciates that his mother brought him to where he is today. And in Judaism, we have this concept a lot. In Judaism, we have the concept of bringing the first to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The first of everything to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have it in the Chai, in the Tzomeach, in the Domeim, and we even have it in the human beings. We have it in the Domeim where a person brings the meiser of the money. He brings it. We have it in the Chai, in the Domim. We have it in the Reishis Agez, which is the first of the shearing, and the meiser of the Ksafim. That's the first of the sheep, which is something it's domem, it's inanimate, it doesn't move, and also the money, something that doesn't move. You have it in the Tzomeach, which is the Bikurim, and also the meiser that you give to the Meiser Ani and the Meiser Sheni. It's the first, but it's mainly the Bikurim. It's the first of the crops that grow you bring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have it in animals. That's the Peter Chamor, and to make sure to give that to the Beis HaMikdash. And also you have it in Pidyon Aben. It's the first of our children, the first of our livestock, the first of our fruits, the first of our inanimate objects of our money, because it comes to symbolize, do I have appreciation? Do I have a karas hatov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And that's what Rashi says in this week's parsha. Ve'amarta elav, says Rashi, she'eincha kfui tova, that you are not taking things for granted. The concept of the mitzvah of Bikurim, and why this is a mitzvah that we have to say the entire story of the Jewish people, and to say over the story, which is the story that we choose to say at Leila Seder, is because at this moment where you have worked so hard for the first of your fruits, and you know you're successful, and you're taking that and you're saying, I know where my success comes from. And it comes from you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I know where it comes from, and I'm ready to give it back to you. That moment of Hakaras Hatov is the moment where you say over the entire story and you feel it yourself. Now, why is it that you need to feel it yourself? Because this is not just a regular story of the history of the Jewish people. Right? I heard Rabbi Jonathan Sachs say this. I thought it was a phenomenal idea. I think I might have mentioned it here before, where he said in Judaism, we don't have the concept of history. Right? How do you say history in Hebrew? Shiur le historia. Historia is just a Hebrewified word of the name history. How would you say it in Lashon HaKodesh? Does the word historia appear anywhere in the Torah, in Tanakh, in the Nevi'im, in the Ksuvim, in Chazal? The word history, and this was the concept of Rav Jonathan Sachs. He said history is his story, right? We never liked history growing up. It was the story of the Incas and the Mayas. It's the story of other Italian history and then European history and American history, whatever it might be. right? We never really liked it. It was a story that happened a long time ago that's not so relevant to me today. And as kids, we're like, why do I need to know this stuff? This is not so relevant to me. Okay, so they were here. Okay, we learned that knowing parts of history is very important. Right? You speak to Rabbi One, he'll tell you about the importance of history. But not only that, and that's really where our Rav speaks about history. In Am Yisrael, history is called zikaron, is called memory. Now, memory is different than history because history might be somebody else's story, but memory is always my memory. Yes, it's something that happened a long time ago to me. It's something that is personal to me. And therefore, our mitzvahs, which are Zeicher Yetzias Mitzrayim, in commemoration of us leaving Mitzrayim, and the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim that we say at the night of Leila Seder, and we say over the entire story, it's not a history book, but it's rather our collective and individual memory as a nation, as a people, and as individuals that shape my identity and who I am and what we stand for. That is our story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's my personal story. And now, and only at the point where I'm actually living it and experiencing it, and I left Mitzrayim and I came into Eretz Yisrael and I planted a vineyard, and here are my trees that I worked so hard all year to actually get something, and now I'm able to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Wow, I'm living history. I'm living a miraculous story. This is my story. This is the story of my ancestors, of my people. I'm living through a miraculous time. That is the feeling that a person who gave the Bikurim was supposed to give over. And that's why this is the parsha that encapsulates the entire story of the Jewish people. We've mentioned this in reference to Hanukkah a little bit, which is the concept of Hoda'ah, right? We're talking about here, there's also the concept of Vidui Ma'asrot, of being mitvadeh. So that Rav Hutner explains that the word in Hebrew, when you're coming to say the word thank you, it means two different things. Thank you, in Hebrew you say lehodot, right? Ani modeh. But the word modeh has two meanings. Ani modeh can mean that I want to say thank you to you. Ani modeh lecha. But there's also ani modeh she'asiti mashu. I admit that I did something. So the word modeh means I admit that I did something, and I thank you that I did something. It's two different things. That's why, by the way, in modim, you notice that we have two different modims. We have the modim that the tzibur says and the modim that the yachid says. First of all, because when you want to say a real thank you, a real appreciation, it has to be personal. You can't have a shaliach, somebody else saying thank you for you. You need to say the thank you yourself. You can't just send other people, oh, tell them thank you for me. If you really want to say thank you to somebody else, you can't have the shliach tzibur saying thank you. You need to say it yourself. That's why when we get to modim, everybody says modim individually, because you're saying at that moment, you're saying thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It needs to be an individual experience. But in modim, we say the word modim twice. We say it in the beginning, modim anachnu lecha she hatau Hashem Elokeinu. So that's ani modeh she. I admit that you are Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Avoseinu. I'm saying over the story in which I admit that you're the one who took us out of Mitzrayim and gave us everything and gave us and then we say at the end, Anachnu modim lach, that we say thank you to you. Ani model lecha is I want to say thank you to. There's two modims and they are intertwined. One is saying the story of I admit that you are the one who took us out of Mitzrayim, and one is saying the thank you. Leila Seder, Pesach night, the mitzvah of saying Hallel is actually only a mitzvah midirabban. The mitzvah of Kol Amar B'Lesaper, we're here to admit that Hashem is our Melech and He took us out of Mitzrayim. And then we're also here to appreciate it. But the real appreciation comes on an individual level when a person many years later was able to actually bring his first fruits in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is really our lesson for us, for our lives, no matter what it is we're doing in our professional lives, no matter where we are, what stage we are in our lives, is to realize that I am here to glorify Hashem's name. And I have the ability to do that by admitting that my success comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore saying thank you to the fact that I recognize that. It's two different stages. You have to recognize and really internalize that I'm working hard. And specifically because I'm a person that's working, I have a chance to glorify Hashem's name greater than anybody else, greater than the people who are sitting and learning all day. Why? Because I work and I'm involved in the physical world, and I recognize that my success and my understanding of life and of the business and industry that I'm in, and the opportunities that came my way, and my failures and the opportunities, they're all really Hashem gave them to me so that I could become a better person and that I could glorify his name in this world. And therefore, I want to say thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is something that applies to us even nowadays, even though we don't have the Bikurim, even though some of us don't live in Eretz Yisrael. We don't have the Beis HaMikdash. But the concept of the Bikurim, the whole world was created for this concept. The whole world was created for this concept based on the Medrash, so that I could be successful in my life, but then I could bring the first offering and give it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? There's a concept in America, the first dollar that I made, I put it up on my wall. It's like, oh, I worked really hard and I made the dollar, right? You ever walk into one of those restaurants? It was something like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. They hang it up on the wall, that first dollar that I made. It meant so much to me. I worked so hard to make my first dollar. That first dollar, you don't hang that up on your wall. You give that to tzedakah. You give that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're the one who made the first dollar. You're the one who got me to this place. You're the person that I appreciate the most, and this is why I'm successful. This is what the lesson of Bikurim is all about. This is what our life is all about. That's what this parsha is teaching us. And therefore, it connects the Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is the story of Seder night that we say over this story, which is appreciating our personal memory and saying thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for taking us out of Mitzrayim, but the understanding that the real thank you that we're celebrating Pesach night only comes when a person is actually successful in whatever he's doing in his life. And he recognizes that I'm a free person, and that I'm a Jew, and that I'm a part of a legacy that started 3,000 years ago by Avram Avinu, right? That we say that in the story. The legacy starts 3,000 years ago. And we went down to Mitzrayim, and we came out, and I am continuing that legacy. No matter what I'm doing in my life, I'm continuing that legacy in glorifying Hashem's name in this world. That is my mission. That is the mission of the Jewish people. And therefore, it's important to keep the Jewish people around. Therefore, it's important to make sure that there are more Jews that understand their mission and partake in that mission, because we're the only ones who have that mission. That's what it says in this week's parsha, where Moshe Rabbeinu reminds Am Yisrael, "V'atem tiyu li mamlechas kohanim v'goy kadosh," that we are an Am Segula and we are a Goy Kadosh. We are Mesugal. It is our mission. That is our Segula. We were chosen for this. And we're the ones who are a Goy Kadosh that bring and show the world that you could live a life of holiness, a life that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that God is part of our lives. This is our mission. This is our destiny. And I believe that we could do it. We just need to internalize it and constantly review it. And Elul is the month in which we internalize this lesson, where we realize that we're living with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we realize that Hashem is with us every day, and that is our mission, to be Mamlech Hashem on the whole world. Letakein olam b'malchut shakai. Big yesher koach to everybody for being here with us. Big pleasure, big schus, big simcha.